One, two, 1, 2. Welcome, everybody. How y'all feel out there? Make some noise for me. Right? Good. Move around. Yes. So this is Queens Public Library. I do hip hop programs here to over 65 different locations in Queens, and this is Central Library here in Jamaica, Queens. We probably would have been ideal to do it in Jackson Heights, because we do have a major library in Jackson Heights. They just don't have a lot of room over there. And I would have did that specifically for Rob, and we could have had a little hometown meeting over there, right? But
This is dope too.
yeah. So we're here, and we're here to talk about, and Mr. Sinister is here as well.
Big shout to Liv for
Yes.
rocking earlier too.
Liv don't speak too much English, right?
No, she's perfect.
We do?
She's perfect. She's from Norway.
She was shaking her head like kind of like somebody from somewhere else, so I didn't want to go too deep.
She is from Norway. Thanks again, Liv.
All right, so Liv, next time you play in the library, you can't play no curses. I have the clean version, because we got little kids around here. I didn't want to say it because I thought you wouldn't understand what I was saying. I gave her a break. But being that you speak it, it's all good. Thank you, Liv. Thank you so much for being here. And everybody else that's here today. So the book is called City of Hip Hop, and I think I said in a promo, City of Hope. And I do that sometimes. I see something that's not in the words, but it means something to me.
I think hope was embedded in the minds of those kids creating hip hop in the 70s in the Bronx. So
yeah. So it's Rob Swift, who is sitting right next to me, and Rasul Moet.
Moet.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about the book, but give Rob a round of applause right now.
Thank you, Queens. Thank you, Ralph.
No problem. And the subtitle is New York City, the Bronx, and a Peace Meeting. So, I like to talk about Queens because we're in Queens right now. And so I'm going to just talk about young Rob Swift coming up, and when he first came across this hip hop thing, what happened?
So my parents, actually my father first immigrated to Jackson Heights, Queens in 1969. Like many other South Americans, Central Americans, Southerners from Mississippi, Atlanta, the Caribbean, right? Jamaica. There was a great migration to New York City after World War II. And that migration picked up steam in the late 60s and early 70s. And my father was one of those young men uprooting his family from Colombia and relocating to New York City for the American dream, so to speak.
Yeah, and many others, like you said, it's funny because I used to hear my grandfather talk about the Panama Canal and how he worked on the Panama Canal, and he's from Trinidad, and I was like, well, why would they be at the Panama Canal? What does it have to do with Trinidad? What does it have to do with the United States? But that's what was going on. They went to different places to get work, or they, moved around the Caribbean or to wherever and ended up here in the United States. And so that's why, your dad and family are here. And so as we think about Queens, it's, to this day, right now, when you look at the census, it's the most diverse county in the United States.
I think in the world.
In the world. Okay.
Yeah.
So it tells you a lot about the population and the people from Queens, that we're able to adapt, we get along with each other, most part, I think. I've never had a
Definitely.
problem with it.
I'm still there.
Yeah. And, I went to Bayside High School. I was like, one of, I don't know, out of the whole class that I was in, maybe 30 black kids, and the rest was white.
If you don't mind me asking, Ralph, what era?
77
77.
is when I graduated. So 73 is when I went into Bayside.
Right.
And I used to travel and I used to play ball. And so we would go, I played football and basketball. But basketball really took you to other places. So I went to the Bronx and Brooklyn and played ball in some of those other places. So the people that I met through traveling are still lifetime friends of mine, you know, and that was to me the beginning of my hip hop. I wasn't into gangs, and we're gonna talk about that. My mom was like, I ain't gonna have it, right? You know, Mom, you're not gonna be in a gang, that's for sure. But I was so into playing ball that took up most of my time. And then one day I saw this guy named Grandmaster Flowers at Reese Beach playing music. And I was like, what is this? You know, and that's where my bug for music came in, and playing music, you know, DJing and things like that. When did you get your bug for playing music?
My Grandmaster Flowers
Yes.
was Jose M. Aguilar, my dad.
Yes.
He picked up DJing to supplement the income that he was making, the poor income, to be honest with you, that he was making at a factory job. He worked at this factory named Le Craft in Long Island City in the 70s. And they used to make parts for planes. And so we grew up in a one-bedroom apartment on 89th Street, 3752, apartment 6L. Sorry to whoever lives there now. And Sinister used to visit me from East Elmhurst, walk over to my house, and it was a tight one-bedroom apartment. And my dad decided to pick up DJing to make extra income. So that was my first introduction to the art form of DJing, playing music for a crowd, controlling a room of people without ever opening your mouth, just by the music that you were playing.
What kind of music was he playing?
My dad brought over his love for salsa, merengue, cumbia, the kind of music, Latin rhythms that you would hear in Colombia and the rest of South America.
Got it.
Now, real quick,
Yes.
my older brother, my dad arrived here in New York City in '69. Took about 2 years to get established. And in 1971, he sent for my mom, who stayed back, waited for my father to get his thing together, and my older brother. My older brother was born in Colombia. So he sent for them in '71. They arrived. And what ended up happening was my brother grew up with that first wave of youth immersing themselves in this culture that we now coin hip hop. So my brother, thanks to my dad who had the gear, because he bought all the necessary gear to DJ, my brother, when my dad would take off to work and my brother and I had days off from school, he would invite his black friends from Corona, Queens. One name that comes to mind is Dwight. We used to call him 40. And he would bring his parents' record collections to our house because, again, my dad had salsa, merengue, cumbia, and those aren't the kind of rhythms or sounds that DJs like Herc or Flash were necessarily playing in those mixtapes. I actually bought some tapes too. So
Dwight had the James Brown and the
right,
Sly and the
James
Family
Brown, right, Sly and the Family Stone, the Bob James,
Right.
the Rush.
Right.
So, Sin, if you want to maybe grab this and pass it around, just make sure I get this back, please, or else there's gonna be.
Nobody leaves.
Yeah, exactly. No one leaves. But tapes, pass it around. Yeah, tapes like the one that you're gonna see eventually as it circles the room. My brother would get his hands on,
Yes.
study them,
Yeah.
and then invite his friends from Corona, Queens. Corona, Queens was predominantly black in the 1970s. They would bring their record collections over to our house, and we would I would sit down and watch. My brother would turn on my dad's equipment, and then they would replicate what they would hear in those tapes.
Right.
And so that was my introduction to hip hop. It was in my living room watching my brother and his friends cut it up, rap. Sometimes my brother would break in the living room as Dwight would cut up Apache, and so that was my introduction to this amazing culture.
So here we are in Queens once again, and there's a lot, going on around you. You clearly, your home is kind of transit. There's a lot moving. People coming in and out of the house. In my house, there would be cousins are coming up from Trinidad, and they would stay there because there was nowhere else to go. So I don't know if that was happening in your place.
100%.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So you have all of that type of activity going on, and in between this, you find this love for the turntables. It may not be called hip hop at the time. I don't know maybe if it was. I don't know how old you are. So
I remember being 8 years old, listening to my brother cut up Apache and imitating his breaking moves in our living room.
Right, but
So we're talking like 77, 78.
Oh, okay. So yeah, hip hop could have been thrown around that time.
You know what? I don't recall really the term hip hop being used back then.
Right.
I know as far as the elements were concerned,
Yeah.
if my brother was on a mic making words rhyme, he was MCing.
Right.
If I was asking my brother to teach me how to do that footwork in my mom's living room, we were rocking. It wasn't called breaking.
Right.
It was called rocking in the 70s.
Breaking is like an 80s thing, right?
That came out more in the early 80s, that term. And then my brother had a friend we lived on the 6th floor. My brother had a friend on the first floor named Ishmael, and Ishmael was a sick graffiti writer.
Right.
So in my building, we had the DJs, my family,
Yeah.
we had graph writers, we had breakers, all in one building, 89th Street, 3752, Jackson Heights.
Right.
And so, although we weren't in the Bronx, by 77, hip hop made its way to Queens.
Oh yeah. No, definitely. I remember my friend Tyrone, and he bought me he might have brought me Apache or some Super Sperm, and he had 2 copies of it, and I was like, "What's up?" And he was like, "Yo, you gotta play this tonight." And I was playing in a disco type environment. And I'm a little bit older than hip hop, or when people start talking about hip hop, I came from the disco era. We played Donna Summers and when eventually Good Times came, and there was 2 copies of Good Times and Get Up and Dance by Freedom and records like that. And so we played those type of records, but when the hip hop stuff came about, and they were not. I saw an article, a clip of you talking, and it was like there were no hip hop records. There was no records made. They were just records that we used to cut back and forth that we saw other DJs do.
I have some right there to your left. If you could grab them, if you could reach them, Ralph. I brought props.
I like that. Let's go.
So just to, it's 2025, and I wasn't sure if there were going to be young people here that never so much as held a record in their hand, right? So I wanted to make sure that I brought visuals. In the 70s, DJs like Grandmaster Flash, Kool Herc, Grounds Theodore, Africa Bambaataa would play anything that sounded good, literally anything that sounded good. So, Sin, would you actually go to the set real quick? Yeah.
I just want to acknowledge my man Rob from the Disco Twins in the building right now.
Ooh, where's he? Oh, respect. That's a Queens legend right there. So go to the set, Sin, real quick. Could you pull up, my laptop is to the left. Right, so pull up Tom Sawyer, Rush. So Tom Sawyer is a Canadian rock band. And DJs like Flash would cut up Tom Sawyer. So when we say there were no hip hop records, that's because the culture was still in its infancy. It was still taking form, taking shape. And honestly, although I've never asked Flash this, I'm pretty sure that they weren't even aware or cognizant of what they were necessarily creating. That 52 years later, someone like Ralph McDaniels would be interviewing someone like me about what they were doing as teens. You know, so it all boils down to records like this, ESG, UFO, Big Daddy Kane sampled it for, what was it? Ain't No Half Steppin'. And I used to watch that music video religiously on Video Music Box.
All girls band, by the way, ESG,
ESG.
from Marcy Projects. And the Bronx.
Right. Ralph referenced Good Times, a disco record, in the hands of a DJ like Francis Grasso, or David Mancuso, or Nicky Ciano. But in the hands of Grandmaster Flash, this was a hip hop tool. Or in the hands of the twin brothers, Story of Queens, cutting it up in the park. These records, here's a favorite of mine. Yo, throw on Planet Rock. So Kraftwerk, a group from Germany, right? So hip hop music is influenced by all genres of music. And what I like to say is that hip hop culture, from the dance to the spoken word to the art to the DJing, the music is amorphous. And what I mean by that is it really doesn't have a structure. It could take the form of any genre depending on the DJ and his openness to, just take a record and do something with it. Hip hop is what you do to the record, not necessarily a sound.
Scratching back in the Grandmaster Flash days was pretty basic compared to what happens right now.
100%. Because it was just taking form, and Flash was breaking the rules. DJs weren't supposed to put their hand on the record and then move it back and forth, causing this sound to come out.
This record cost me $5, bro. You gonna mess up my record, man.
And DJs like Francis Grasso, David Mancuso, Nicky Ciano would hold a record like this.
Yes.
Right? Because you wouldn't want to put your fingers on the groove.
Don't touch the record.
Exactly. But then Flash came and Theodore came.
And destroyed
it. Literally, because when you move the record back and forth on those old needles in the 1970s, you would wear the spot of the sound that you would cut up. So if you were playing the vinyl, when it got to the Good Times part, it would sound like sure times. Right. So but they didn't care because it was about being resourceful, using the turntable as an instrument, because that was the tool that they had access to. These kids didn't have bass guitars or...
Right. I just didn't understand, and you can tell me, why didn't they care? Because clearly I spent $5 on it, you spent $5 on it. I don't think we was rich at that time, but you didn't have no problem in messing yours up.
Nope. You would just go buy another copy if you had to. I think, speaking for myself, I feel like they didn't care because what took precedence was that feeling they got when they put their record hand on the record and started moving that wax back and forth and hearing themselves coax this sound that doesn't happen unless you do that, unless you break that rule.
Right.
So,
what is that?
I don't know if it's this like innate, organic feeling. Yeah, exactly. Like you hear yourself doing something, and that feeling takes precedence over anything. Right. So if the record is worn out and you have to ask your mom for allowance money to go back to Numbers Records in Jackson Heights or Music Factory on Times Square or Downstairs Records and buy another copy, you would do it because it was worth it.
Right. It made you important in the community. And some were a little bit more aggressive. They just were tearing up all their records, and you'd be like, damn man, you're gonna have to buy a whole new collection after that. but they didn't care, like you
They
said.
didn't care. I love what you just said. You said it better than I was trying to figure out how to say it. It made them important in the community. So by the time I asked my brother to teach me how to DJ, I was in the 6th grade. I was going to IS 145 on Northern Boulevard, and he taught me how to DJ. A few months after that, I found out that my principal, for all those closer to my age that remember GO parties in junior high school, my principal made an announcement that he was going to do a GO party, and then I asked him, let me DJ it. I'm 12 years old now. He was like, sure, Rob, and they paid me $50.
Oh,
The school, for the most part, my friends didn't know I could DJ until the day of the GO party. It's like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Kids are trickling into the gymnasium, and they see Robert DJing, and it was like they were watching an alien, because I was just this like normal kid up until then that would break in the hallways. But now they're seeing this 12-year-old kid man this grown man equipment in the gym.
Right.
And so I say that to say, once my friends in junior high school saw that I could DJ, I became the man, the go-to man for a mixtape.
Right.
And my identity started to grow, and I created this aura around me because Rob was the only person that could work this gear at 12 years old. So it did make you feel important.
So we're talking about your book, The City of Hip Hop, which we will have on sale here, by the way. So hold on to your dollars for a second. We're gonna after the talk. New York City, the Bronx, and a peace meeting, and I wondered why you included the peace meeting. Let's go back to that, because that takes us kind of out of Queens for a minute.
So in 1971, December, we're talking the era of gangs. What preceded the Grandmaster Flashes, the Africa Bambatas, the Disco Twins in the 70s was gang culture. And Ralph, you had referenced earlier, your mom was like, you are not running the streets with gangs. She was that way towards me, but my brother, my older brother, would defy her rules and intertwine with that street culture.
71 is a big year for those who don't know, because Vietnam is coming to an end. There's a lot going on. Black Panthers are starting to come. There's a lot happening in 1971.
And so in December of 1971, Benjamin Cornell, who was a warlord for a gang called the Ghetto Brothers, was sent by Yellow Benji. They called Benjamin Cornell Black Benji. Benjamin Melendez was the president of the Ghetto Brothers. His name was Yellow Benji on the street. Yellow Benji sends Black Benji to broker peace between two rival gangs. At this site where he was trying to get the gangs to kill the Static, Black Benji gets murdered. This is December 1971. That is a watershed moment for hip hop, believe it or not, because that inspired Benjamin Melendez, Yellow Benji, who was Puerto Rican, the president of the Ghetto Brothers, to call a peace meeting between all of the gangs in New York City. And this took place at the Boys Club on Hoe Avenue in the Bronx. So at this meeting, and you guys can Google it right now, you could take your phones out, go on YouTube, and do a search for Bronx Peace Meeting, Hoe Avenue, and all kind of information will pop up. At this peace meeting, Benjamin Melendez got all the gangs in New York City to basically quell tensions because his brother, Black Benji, was murdered. And so when that happened, it created the space, the environment for the DJs to throw park jams, for people to go from one side of the Bronx to another side of the Bronx to listen to a DJ. Because prior to this peace meeting, if you left your neighborhood and you found yourself in territory that wasn't yours, you'd get beat down. There's really no other PC way to say it. So in a lot of ways, Black Benji was a martyr for hip hop, because again, without that peace meeting, tensions would have continued, and I don't think you could have the kind of park jams that Africa Bambaataa was throwing with the gang culture as fierce as it was prior to 1973.
Right. So you couldn't go to certain neighborhoods. I mean, clearly that was happening in Queens as well.
100%.
I don't know if it was because of gang culture. Or maybe it was, and I just wasn't aware of it.
No, it's the same thing.
Yeah. And you could only, deal with certain groups sometimes. I went to Bayside High School, predominantly white school. I played football, big white guys. And so sports kind of took me into a world of everybody. But kids from my neighborhood, African Americans that lived at that time in Hollis, were like, they don't know no white people. They don't know no Latino people. They just know whatever they know in their particular neighborhood, which leads to the elephant in the room, which you said inspired you to kind of make this book, was Latinos and African Americans. Where did hip hop start? There's an organization, Foundational Black Americans, that have, jumped at me, jumped on you, and others, and said, nah, we was all there doing it together. No, you weren't. So I opened up the conversation and I started to think about it. I said, well, let's find out, where did this all start? How did it start? How did this whole thing come about, hip hop? Who were the first people to think about matching beats, scratching records? Who chose these records that make them what they were? And the conversation has still been going on.
5 years now.
Right. You were dealing with it from early. I got caught in the middle of it around the same time Fat Joe got caught in it. And so here we are. And I know in Jamaica, Queens here, Southside is right here. You had guys like Infinity Machine and Cypher Sounds and all of those guys that were making music or DJing, as well as a lot of musicians lived here as well. And Queens is unique like that, and I'm sure that Rob can speak about Astoria, and others can speak about East Elmhurst and Corona and all these different areas. So where are we at right now, March 2025, with that conversation?
Unfortunately, the narrative that hip hop culture was exclusively, and I'm putting air quotes on purpose, created by foundational Black Americans. Unfortunately, that narrative has been now embedded into what we experience as hip hop. You see it all over social media, and it is what it is, right? But here's the thing. Were you gonna say something?
Yeah, because is it embedded? I don't know. I think we've had the conversation, and the thing that's great, and that's why we're in the library right now, right? There are books, there's information, this is what we do. To create something like this, there was a lot of work put into information and fact checking and everything that goes along with that. And as an archivist, as a historian, somewhat, I'm always want to get all the information. I wasn't in the Bronx when, quote unquote, if it started in the Bronx. I wasn't there. There are people in Queens that'll say, nah, we was doing that way before the Bronx was doing it. I don't agree with that argument because I was alive when that happened and I was there. But if that's what you feel, let's lay it out. Let's lay out all the information.
100%.
And let's talk about it.
But to exclude other races, and I hate saying the word race. I always catch myself when I say that because race is a social construct. Race is not a real thing. And I know we've grown up in this country, on this planet, thinking, well, what race is he or what race is she? But race is a social construct. It's like time. Like 4 p.m. Eastern is not a real thing. It's a social construct. We use time to just communicate. Yo, be here at 4. We're gonna meet. But time really doesn't exist. Race doesn't exist. It does actually. But there's one race. There aren't many races. There's one race. Human race. That's it. There's no Puerto Rican race or Colombian race or black race or German race. You cut us all open, we bleed the same. And our body parts are basically the same. And barring whatever differences in DNA, eye color, height, you lose your hair, maybe you don't lose your hair, you grow a nice beard like me, or you can't. Barring stuff like that, we're all the same. But here's my thing, and if I take too long, just cut me off, Ralph. Hip hop, in my opinion, from my lens, my perspective, was not created. Hip hop is a culture that happened. Hip hop was a response to redlining. Redlining is a practice that banks apply when they want to separate different races from each other. So in the Bronx, you had heavy redlining. That's why in the 1970s, the South Bronx specifically was predominantly black. But I mean black diaspora. I don't mean foundational black American. I mean Caribbean black, Colombian black, right? American black, obviously. Blacks from the South also migrated during that Great Migration to the Bronx. But you also had Latinos, Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, and Hondurans, a slew of Latinos in the Bronx, but predominantly Puerto Rican. Here's another little tidbit that a lot of people may not realize. Leading up to the 70s, like in the 50s and 60s, the Bronx was actually predominantly Jewish and other white, like Irish, Polish, predominantly Jewish. But once the Bronx started to deteriorate because of policies like benign neglect that were implemented by Richard Nixon, benign neglect was basically the title of a memo written by Patrick Moynihan, who was an advisor to Richard Nixon. And in this memo, he basically pathologized black people and Latinos. They burn their buildings, they're drug addicts, a lot of them come from single family homes, all lies. But in pathologizing minorities in the Bronx, property values in the Bronx started to go down, white flight took place. The white people that left the Bronx used the highways built by racist urban planners like Robert Moses. We're talking about the Cross Bronx Expressway. He demolished neighborhoods to build this highway in the name of urban renewal to beautify the Bronx. But by doing so, he displaced a lot of families. And in displacing families, the property value in the Bronx went down, and that's where you have banks redlining the people that lived there. Because the whites that took off to places like White Plains, Long Island, left because they could get banks to subsidize loans for them to buy homes, whereas the Puerto Ricans and the blacks that wanted to leave, diaspora blacks, not foundational black Americans, but all the different kind of black people that lived there, couldn't get subsidized to get loans to move to White Plains like their white neighbors. So as a result, you were in this, what I like to call petri dish of a borough where on top of redlining, you had a fiscal crisis in New York City. I'm sure you remember that, Ralph. The Bronx, but New York City in general was suffering financially, right? So when you put all of these things into a petri dish, right? You put all of this bacteria into a petri dish, you over time see what grows. And for me, the Bronx is symbolic of a petri dish. All of these factors led to kids like Grandmaster Flash, Africa Bambaataa, Kool Herc, Grand Wizard Theodore, to turn to something more positive as a response to their condition. And so over the course of, I don't know, let's just say from 1973, the consensus August 11th date that hip hop was born, which I don't necessarily subscribe to, but just going off that through, let's say 1983, this culture was growing as a response to the conditions in the Bronx.
That made them put their hands on the record, right?
Thank you. Right on, bro.
So that made them put their hands on the record.
That is what, see, exactly. Oh, that was beautiful how you just tied all that together. That's what made them put their hands on a record instead of putting their hands on a knife or a gun or a chain or a bat. You feel me?
So, because and the second part of it, putting your hands on the record, was that while that was happening in the Bronx, there was something happening in Queens and Brooklyn, in some of these other areas. And they wasn't necessarily putting their hands on the record like the guys in the Bronx, but it didn't take but a second. You know, if I saw you do it
exactly
that day, I did it the next day or that night.
And you know what's interesting about that, not to go off on a tangent, but I'm sure you'll bring it back around, Ralph. The interesting thing about hip hop is that in the 70s, the pioneers of this culture were hoarders. And what I mean by that is they would take their vinyl and take Sharpies or markers, alcohol, and rub the title off, or scratch out the title, or use a marker and cover the title, because they didn't want another DJ to know what records they played, because they wanted to be the only person with a copy, an original copy of Good Times when it first came out, or an original copy of Kraftwerk Trans-Europe Express, a la Africa Bambaataa.
Also, technology. Let's talk about technology. Oftentimes, and I'm sure you and Rob, I know, has heard this, and people were talking about, oh, they had a mix and they were scratching back and forth in 73. I'm like, I don't know if the technology existed at that time to do that. If we had a cue.
No, and here's the thing. So this is the amazing, beautiful thing about these kids, these poor. This is a picture of, this is the cover of the City of Hip Hop, right? And on the cover, it's two kids, a black kid and a Latino kid, and the landscape is rubble. So it's basically letting you know this is what these kids grew up in, right? And this is what's amazing to me. DJ equipment was not designed for Grand Wizard Theodore to scratch. DJ equipment, whether it was Technics or GLI, whatever company we're talking about, did not design their gear for a youth like Grandmaster Flash to come up with the idea of buying duplicate copies of Good Times and then backspinning. Good times, good times, good times. DJ gear was designed for the club DJs, the disco DJs like Francis Grasso, Nicky Siano, David Mancuso, to pick up the needle, drop it on a record, and then let the song play out. And then towards the end, you might have heard maybe a 4-bar mix where you're syncing two songs together so that the crowd can seamlessly continue dancing from one song to the next. But these kids were so, the ingenuity that these kids had was so on the next level that without anyone telling them that they could take take their hand, put it on a record, and move it back and forth as the platter of a turntable is turning, although no one told them they could do that, they figured out a way through curiosity to create this technique of scratching, this technique of backspinning. And now DJs like myself have a school, an online school. I have an online school called Brolic Army DJ School, where I teach people how to do what this amazing generation of youth did in the 1970s. And we're talking young, predominantly black kids, diaspora black kids. Africa Bambaataa, his lineage is Jamaica, Barbados. Grandmaster Flash, Barbados. Kool Herc, we all know, Jamaica. Grand Wizard Theodore, I believe his family was from the South. So it was a diaspora black creation. And that's the main thing that I feel I try to drive home with this book, is that hip hop, again, was a response to the conditions socially, economically, politically that minorities, quote unquote, suffered in the Bronx and the outer boroughs. And also it's a response to just being a young kid and not having access to band at school because school funding for band is over, right? And so like these kids figured out genius ways of being musical on non-conventional gear. The turntable was not designed for you to scratch or beat juggle when you're backspinning a sound or a drum beat, but these kids figured out a new language on turntables, and now you have DJ schools that make billions of dollars, you know, so it's amazing.
Programs like Serato.
That, or CDJs that mimic what turntables do. And why? Because of these disenfranchised youth in the 1970s that figured out a way to exercise their creativity as a means to not turn to the gang culture that preceded it.
Right. Like on this record, Good Times, let's see if it doesn't say it on this one. It would say extended play. Oh, yes. The reason why they made extended play, because, you know why, right? Is because most DJs at that time, if you didn't really know how to play music, you needed that extended, longer version to get it on beat. So you needed a little bit more time to get guys who knew what they were doing. They go on beat all the time, but it made the extended version so it would make it a little bit easier for everybody to get it, which is an industry thing.
Whereas youth like Grandmaster Flash didn't need the extended version. They figured out innately, like, I don't know, this is just like, it blows my mind. Flash figured out, well, if I have 2 copies of Good Times and I drop, the Good Times starts on a 4. You hear Good Times on a 4. He was applying music theory to Good Times without even realizing he was applying music theory to this record. You know, so taking 2 copies and extending it manually, physically with his hand. That to me is genius, and it just goes to show, man, that a lot of times creativity and innovation comes from lack, from not having access. These companies create these programs now where you could just hit a button and recreate what kids like Grandmaster Flash were figuring out left to their own mental devices. Their hand, their mind, their ears, and a turntable that wasn't designed for them to scratch and loop a beat on. That to me is incredible.
I wanted to talk about Rasul because his important, I can see his contributions here, but can you talk about why First of all, why did you even do that?
I appreciate you asking about Rasul. So I met Rasul Moat at Indiana University circa 2017, 2018. I was there giving a speech on hip hop and met up with him, hit it off for obvious reasons. And he's a professor. Now he's at NC State. And so we just kept in touch, and Indiana University invited me back on a couple of occasions after that to do other symposiums on music and technology and DJing. You know, DJing right now is this big billion-dollar industry, right? And so fast forward to 2020, as Ralph referenced earlier, this narrative started to take hold, especially on social media, that hip-hop culture is exclusively foundational Black American culture. So they look at me, and because my parents, they meaning FBA, look at me, and because my parents are from Colombia, they see me as a tether. Tether meaning I attach myself to Black culture because it's cool. And so I'm seeing this crazy narrative about a culture that I always felt was diverse from day one. And I wasn't really necessarily understanding how powerful or how loud of a voice these people had up until the controversy with rappers like Fat Joe and Busta Rhymes. And so me knowing what I know, being Black, but also Latino, and understanding the plight of minorities here in this country, I was just like dumbfounded, because my whole thing was like, wow, in all my life on this planet, I never would have thought that I would jump on Twitter and be called filth, Latino filth, by another Black man.
Outside it.
You know what I mean? Like, that had me messed up for a minute, right? Not a white person. This is a Black person calling me Latino filth, right? So, and we understand the racial tensions that come with this country and the history and all that. So we make it this far with a culture that allows you to be yourself, whether you're white, Black, male, female, it doesn't matter. What matters is, are you down? Can you break? Can you DJ? Can you rhyme? Can you write graph? That's what matters. And so seeing all of this taking place online and being on the receiving end of a lot of foul, racist stuff, I decided, you know what? I'm gonna write a book, because I know what I know. And, you know, I went to college and I studied sociology and political science and anthropology, and I love to write. Anyone that follows me on social media knows I talk a lot. As you can see, Ralph probably has said 3 words in the last 10 minutes. And so I was like, nah, dude, I'm gonna write a book. And so I started writing a book. 6 months into it, I'm scratching my head like, yo, is this making any sense? Like, I feel like I'm really great at writing captions on Instagram. Anyone that follows me knows I don't write 2 sentences. I write I do the maximum. Until Instagram is like, you can't write anymore, right? Because I love writing. But writing a book, something like this, you know, I have experience writing 30-page papers in Baruch College back in the days, in the 90s, but not writing a book. So after 6 months or so, I had the outline of the book, but I wasn't sure if it was really tying in what I wanted to say in a coherent fashion. So I hit up Rasul, because he and I just hit it off when I went to Indiana University years back, and he helped me finish the book. So I just want, although Rasul's not here, he was gonna try to make it, but he couldn't. I just wanna thank Rasul Moat for helping me pen the book. and get it out there, man. Because while I never thought that I'd be an author, and at this point in my career.
Thank you. So we got some questions while we're still fresh. I saw it. Hand up. Introduce yourself.
My name is Ron Long, originally from Philly, represent Schoolie D, hip hop, we do our thing, but I love New York. I'm here, and I had just two questions, if I may, Rob. Two questions. My first one is, what is your definition of hip hop music? And if a rapper raps over any type of non-hip hop music, does that automatically make it hip hop music? Because if you listen to Run DMC, one of my favorite groups, King of Rock, instrumental, that's rock music. But being that Run and them rap over it, does it automatically, and give me 3 examples of pure hip hop. Give me 3 songs that's pure hip hop music. Because we got rock and roll, we know what that sound like. We know what R&B sound like. We know what jazz sound like. What is hip hop music?
I don't think there is anything called hip hop music. I think what the DJ, and that's what we talked about, when he put his hand on it and started scratching it, that's when it really became something.
Where's the mic? You got the mic here? 1, 2.
All right. So, what is hip hop music? So, the best way I could answer that question is by saying this. There really is no hip hop music, because hip hop is an amalgamation of all genres of music. So to add to that, for me, you have rap music, that's a genre of hip hop, but hip hop is a culture. And it's a culture that doesn't segregate with regards to the music and DJing. It's a culture that doesn't segregate. Now, here's what I mean. This is a song called Pussyfooter by Jackie Robinson. So, what genre does this sound like? Disco, exactly. Gonna forward it. So right now you can picture John Travolta, right, in a white suit, right? There you go, right? Now records like this in the 70s had break parts. And the break part of a record was this section of a song where where the majority of the instrumentation would stop, and you would have definitely the drums, because you needed sound, and maybe a guitar. In this case, the break part of Pussyfooter, it's the drums and a violin. So let's just go right to it. And that's the break part. Now, it's still not hip hop. The break part ends, and then the singing starts again, right? It's still not hip hop. Although we're familiar with that break part because it's been sampled, it's not hip hop until I put my hand on the record and start moving the record back and forth and scratching. Here's an example. So
partially, right?
okay. So once I put my hand on the record and start coaxing sound, then it becomes hip hop. Now it disappeared. It went poof. It doesn't exist anymore. So for me, hip hop is action. It's me picking up the mic and saying to the hip hop, shoo wop, the wop, turn your body and check the clock. Or taking an aerosol spray can and writing on a wall my name. Or we got Beat Girl Sapphire right here, right? So a B-girl or B-boy spinning on their head or on their backs or doing floats or swipes or CCs. These are breaking moves. Hip hop to me is action. So once it stops, it doesn't exist anymore. You don't have hip hop. Now you have rap music, and rap music is the commodification of hip hop, right? You sell it, but hip hop in its most organic form, it's free, doesn't cost anything, anybody can do it. It doesn't segregate on race, based on race or economics or creed or religion or sexual orientation. Hip hop is just expression. That's all it is. And when it doesn't happen, it doesn't exist. That to me is what hip hop is.
Introduce yourself, sir.
Jeff Harris, how y'all doing?
Legendary Jeff Harris in the building, promoter from back in the days.
So, I have a problem with hip hop starting in the Bronx.
Okay.
Think about it. That's like saying hip hop started everywhere at the same time. See, because I'm from Queens and the Bronx, and so here's the answer to that. That's like saying sex just happened in the Bronx. Sex was happening everywhere at
worldwide.
the same time. You feel me? So when we leave out of here today, we have to keep that in mind. It didn't start in the Bronx. It started everywhere. Unless you're going to say, yo, sex started on Fordham Road. Sex was happening Fordham Road everywhere at the same time. So I'd like to keep that.
Can I just piggyback that real quick, Ralph? What's your name again, brother?
Jeff Harris.
Jeff Harris. What Jeff Harris is saying actually makes a lot of sense, and I'll try to be brief. Rapping or MCing was happening before Coke La Rock, before DJ Hollywood. There's a group called the Jubilaires. Go on YouTube, do a search for the Jubilaires. It was a gospel singing group, and they were rapping. We're talking 1930s. Okay? Breaking happened before Trixie, before Rocksteady Crew, before Dynamic Rockers. Do a search for cavorting in Africa.
Who put their hand on the record first? What borough?
That I don't know. That I don't know.
Everybody ain't do it at the same time, Jeff. Somebody put their hand on the record first
And moved it.
and moved it.
I think a lot of people, a lot of DJs might have done that and not known
That
they were doing it.
Well, see, when you're back to DJing, when you're DJing, let's say you're gonna transition from Good Times to Take Me to Mardi Gras, right? If you're DJing in a disco in 1973, 1974, you have to put your hand on the record and cue and look for the sound, the start of the song. So in essence, that is scratching. It's just that it's not happening out of the speakers. You're hearing yourself scratch because you're cueing the sound back and forth.
Disco DJs had 2 records, 2 copies of it.
2 turntables.
Right. And they weren't scratching. They were just extending it, the record, the whispers. They were extending it. They were extending, we got our own thing, CJ and Company. They weren't necessarily scratching it. They might have been
Right. Looping, which is, yeah.
So that the 2 copy concept was there before scratching, before hip hop. It's
Exactly.
this part.
Right, that's what makes it hip hop.
Right.
That's why I say hip hop is action. It's It's physical action, and then when it's not happening, it's gone. It goes poof. It disappears. So cavorting in northern Nigeria, Africans, go on YouTube, do a search for cavorting, Kavorting. You'll see Africans breaking or breakdancing to congas. I'm talking early 1940s. So you have rap, the Jubilaires, you have Africans breaking. It wasn't called, obviously they called it cavorting, they called it something different, but we know it as breaking in the 1940s. Graffiti, there was a gang called the Harlem Dukes. They used to write their gang name on walls in New York City to mark their territory. This is before writers like Cornbread and Taki 183 and all the other writers from the 1970s. And lastly, as far as DJing is concerned, I mean, again, you just eloquently said it. Before we came up with these terms, scratching, dropping, a lot of the disco DJs were doing it. It's just that they didn't have names for it. And they weren't necessarily doing it for the audience. They were doing it for themselves in their headphones, queuing up good times as they're about to transition into the song. So real quick, all I want to say as far as that is concerned is that each element of hip hop existed before 1973, trust me. Each element existed before 1973. And basically, hip hop is just a reinvention of things that were happening already, and youth in the Bronx caught on to it and turned it into this culture, this billion-dollar culture that now, unfortunately, you have a segment of FBA, Foundational Black Americans, that they want to now claim it for their own and claim it as something that they created alone. And the book, basically, The City of Hip Hop, and I have copies here, guys, debunks that whole thing. And, I just want to say, I want to thank Ralph. I definitely want to get this out. I want to thank Ralph McDaniels for hosting me. Yo, I honestly, 1,000,000% would not be here if it wasn't for Ralph McDaniels. Straight up. And I say that because, when I was too young to go to the Fresh Fest concert, I was watching it at home, courtesy of Ralph McDaniels on Channel 31. Learning, watching, I'm just getting chills, just oof. Like watching and listening watching and listening to Jam Master Jay go, run, Rick, run, Rick, run, Rick, run, Rick. Like I memorized, as soon as I would see that, I would just run to my dad's turntables and then copy what Jay was doing. If it wasn't for Ralph McDaniels, I would not have discovered that there was this competition called the DMC, Disco Mixing Club, that was taking place in my own city, New York. I thought this was a competition that only took place in London, right? Because I would hear a mentor of mine, Johnny Juice, play audio excerpts of DJs in London battling it out for the world title, right? And then one day, I'm coming home from school, it's 3:30, I put it on Channel 31, and Ralph airs an excerpt of the Northeast finals of the DMC at the car wash. And I was too young to go, I was 18 years old. So I'm watching DJs like Steve D, Plastic Man. Now all the stuff that I was hearing on the radio, courtesy of Johnny Juice, because Johnny Juice would play audio excerpts of these battles, now I'm watching it in my living room. And I'm like, yo, this is dope. This is crazy. And then a couple of months later, Psycho Les from the Beatnuts was like, yo, they're having a DJ battle on Times Square. New Music Seminar battle. And I went, because less knew, I was all about that culture. And I went, and Ralph was there filming, and I got to see what I saw live. Steve D win the New Music Seminar title. And so, Ralph, man, like, I wish we had another 2 hours
Yeah,
to
man.
explain, bro, how important you are to me and to hip hop, to Sinister.
That's what hip hop is all about. What you just said. So I don't care where you from, and if you're not from New York, this is New York culture we talking about right now. If you from New York, make some noise right now. We're a little different. We're a little different over here. I'm saying that everywhere else has its own characteristics, its own DNA. But New York is New York. And when we talk about this hip hop thing, it's very important that we know that it started here, and it started in the 5 boroughs. I don't care if the Bronx did it the day before us, but we was there. And so this is what this is all about. So I want y'all to buy some books. Come up and meet.
Yo, we got copies. We got copies for sale.
Yeah.
I'm selling them for the discounted price on Amazon, which is $40, and the regular retail price is $50. You get $10 off. If you want to learn about this culture and understand, yeah, definitely. If you want to learn about this culture and that, if you want to learn about this culture beyond the hoopla, get yourself a copy of the City Hip Hop. Like, there's a lot of information about hip hop that I feel is not really spoken about, and my partner and I, Rasul Moat, I feel we do the culture justice, man. Ralph McDaniels, thank you so much, yo. This is a hero, my bro. Like, I don't want this guy to go, dude. Stay here with me, bro.
Hey yo, come on.
Yo, Ralph, man.
Come on, we're about to have a little debate. I see it coming.
I want to share with them. I had a group called Onyx. And in the beginning,
2 weeks they'll be here.
listen, in the beginning of breaking that group, if it wasn't for Ralph McDaniels, listen, when we broke the group, we started the group, and it was on a very small level. We used to break, we knew Ralph was getting ready to play this thing. I mean, I fell once or twice in the room, running to the TV. We would run to the TV. And from him exposing that group, that's what he blew that group up. This man broke hip hop across the world, right here.
Right, they'll be here on, Frederick will be here on the 8th of April. He's premiering the book, Back to F Up, and the story of Onyx. So I don't have a flyer, so I made a copy of what Frederick sent me. They'll be here same time on the 7th. It's a Tuesday, usually I do programs on a Thursday. We'll come out for that because clearly Frederick has a lot of history. On the 8th, I'm sorry, April 8th. So he'll be here on April 8th for Tuesday. So Sinister's gonna play some music. No Sharpie. I can get you one. I'll get you one. And get him a Sharpie. Get him a Sharpie. He needs that now. Well, you gotta go. We got Sharpies. Look good. It's the library.
Going?
Y'all all right? Make some noise. You're feeling good right now. All right?
Thanks again, Ralph.